So we'll be able to welcome everyone to Buddha's Center. We'll get started in just one moment here. Uh, Let me get this started over here. And we will, in five, four, no, I got that one. Hey everybody, welcome to Buddhist Center. Okay, welcome to Buddhist Center. My name's Jeff Allen. Today, once again, we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, a text that Rinpoche spent, half of my life teaching me, and many of us for so many years, some of us decades. And everything that we find Rinpoche taught when we look at all of those videos that he left us with, that incredible library of teachings, we find that all of the conversations that were taking place with us from Rinpoche had to do with this text, the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, and the root text Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment, and that over kind of arching umbrella of Maitreya's Abhisama Alamkara, and then all of the teachings that we find that trickle down into the Lam Rim. And we see that there isn't anything that's left out. We find that every teaching that the Buddha gave that's applicable to the stages of the path to enlightenment for an individual can be found condensed or kind of expanded upon in the great Lam Rim tradition, from the Lord Atisha, who was able to take the profound view, extensive deeds, and lineage of blessings, and put them into an understandable format for us to meditate on. And then it gets passed down through Dontompa and the Kadampa masters and ends up at Tsongkhapa. And Tsongkhapa, with this just beautiful ability to elucidate the meaning of everything, clarified and expanded upon the implicit meanings and so forth of that great text, the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, based on all of the extensive teachings of the Lord Buddha Shakyamuni and the pronouncements of the sutras and tantras. And then we see the incredible lineages of the profound view, extensive deeds, and lineage of blessings that all come from Buddha Shakyamuni. And Lama Tsongkhapa just spared no expense in, he really made sure he looked at every single one of those teachings in a full totality, so that he wasn't ever satisfied with some kind of partial instruction or partial path. He just kept refining the view and refining the view and refining the view. And we find that refinement in the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. So we're so lucky. And this text is one of the greatest pieces of literature ever written, when we look at the clarity that it provides, the resources that it uses, and so forth. So, without further ado, before we get into any more teaching on the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, let's begin with a motivation, both physically and mentally. The physical motivation will support our ability to mentally have a good motivation, and then eventually mentally turn into a Buddha. So we'll get into what's called the 7-point Vajrayana posture, where we put our legs into preferably the Vajra posture, or whatever cross-legged style we can, or just on the floor, if that's only what we're physically capable of doing. We work within whatever limitations we have. So we sit with our legs in the cross-legged, with our hands on our lap, with our right hand and our left, with our thumbs touching, making a diamond. So they sit in our lap comfortably in this fashion. This symbolizes the union of method and wisdom that will be necessary for all beings to unite in order to become a Buddha. So we're using this by aligning these two right and left sides. We sit with our back very straight, with our vertebrae like a stack of coins. Our shoulders in a very comfortable position, not back, not forward, just sitting comfortably, which allow for our kind of elbows to make a bow. And then our hands, while they're sitting comfortably in our lap, will kind of make the basis of support for the gravity that's kind of pulling our shoulders towards our elbows into that kind of bow fashion. So we have our back very straight, like a stack of coins, shoulders comfortable, head slightly forward, eyes slightly open at our nose, focused on the tip, and our mouth in a comfortable position with our tongue on the roof of our mouth, against the teeth. We begin to breathe in and out through our nose. So we breathe in through our nose, bringing the breath all the way to the top, filling our lungs and diaphragm. And then as we exhale, we count the number 1. Inhale, bring the breath all the way to the top, filling the lungs and diaphragm. Exhaling, counting the number 2. Breathing in and out only through the nose. Bringing our mind back to the breath if it strays to anything else. Making sure we're counting. We know what number we're on, and we're focused only on the breath and the counting. If we see our mind get excited or start to get sleepy, we bring it back to the breath and the clarity of the breath. Now imagine the space in front of you at about eye height, about thumb height, about maybe 1.5 or 2 tall. We see Buddha Shakyamuni in the space in front of us in the front generation. Beautiful, radiant, golden. Now we're focusing only on the breathing in and out, and the counting in Buddha Shakyamuni's image in front of us. Not allowing our mind to stray in any other direction. Breathing in and out, counting Buddha Shakyamuni's image. We think about how fortunate we are to be able to focus on such an incredible being that we will become. We have the potential to be this incredible being that's abandoned all faults and only has excellent qualities. Perfection of wisdom, perfection of compassion, perfection of power to help all sentient beings. And we today can think about such a great being who is the model of who we will become. Think about why we came to Buddhism, the pain, the dissatisfactions, the questions we needed answered. Rejoice in the fact that we have a being who has completely satisfied all of the answers to those questions. All of the whys have been answered. The Buddha alone taught the Four Noble Truths. The Buddha stated first, this is the superior truth of suffering. We think about the various sufferings that we experience, and we know that this is so relatable, this is so true, this is something we can't argue with. The suffering of birth that takes place, the suffering of aging, the suffering of sickness, the suffering of death, all of these things are so obvious. The Buddha said that everything's moving so quickly we can't even imagine it. Every second there's 65 moments that are happening. And all of those moments, everything is changing. Everything that's born is dying. Everything is aging every moment. We see old age come suddenly, but it's been happening the whole time since birth. We've been getting older and older and older. Our minds are just too immature to see it. We're moving so quickly towards our death. So quickly towards being separated from pleasant things, and meeting with unpleasant things. So quickly to get what we don't want, not getting what we want. We have these aggregates that every moment are suffering, that have been forced on us. We didn't choose to have aggregates, mental and physical aggregates of suffering. Our karma and our afflictions threw us into them. Think about all the different sufferings we will have to experience. Think about what the Buddha taught us about uncertainty within cyclic existence. Everything we feel so certain about, all those people we feel are our loved ones, we may not know again until we're Buddha. We may see them as our greatest enemies in the future, or a worm in a garden. Is the bird that just flew by my great-grandmother? I see them as a stranger. There's no certainty. Never satisfied. Even when we have what it looks like we need, we aren't satisfied. It's this grinding feeling within us of dissatisfaction. This body we think is ours, we cling to so greatly. We try to physically improve it with all of its limitations. And then we shuck it off. It will mean nothing a moment later. This thing that we polished, we shuck it off. And then where will we go? Maybe in somewhat happy places. Probably in the most suffering places. And even the happy places have the suffering of change, and we know that they have that self-destruct mechanism. And who will be with us during this journey? We'll be alone. As soon as we die, our loved ones that are standing around us will begin to walk away. Our name won't be the person that's alive anymore. Someone will declare, this person is dead. Jeff is now the deceased. No more the living. And only I will experience the looking down on that body and be all alone and move to the intermediate state. No one will be with me. All of these things I'm so attached to will disappear. My friends will become nothing. I will become nothing. My enemies become nothing, as Shantideva says. All will become nothing. And then I'll believe it's something new. And this happens over and over and over and over and over again. I'll experience mental and physical pain. And even if I'm in the higher realms, I still could experience the suffering of change, which is that inside every bit of happiness that I experience, there's that self-destruct mechanism within it, that all the happiness that's contaminated is suffering, yet I crave it, I seek it, and it's the bait that keeps me in cyclic existence. And even if I get to the highest realms in cyclic existence, in the formless realm, I'll still have the pervasive compounded suffering. I'll be sitting in a meditative samadhi of formlessness, feeling I'm liberated, and suddenly the karma that allows me to stay in that position is no longer, and I'll be thrust into a lower realm and possibly in a hell realm of existence. So shocked that I wasn't liberated. So shocked that it's still happening. The Buddha stated that all of these things are impermanent. All impermanent things are results. All results depend upon causes. And the Buddha stated that this is the superior truth of origin, and identified exactly what was causing this situation to happen over and over and over again. The Buddha said that we had to abandon that origin. We had to abandon what was causing it to happen over and over and over again, and if we did, it would end. The Buddha stated that it's our misperception of reality, our grasping at the I and phenomena as having some objective existence, having some independent, true nature that then leads us to have an inappropriate attention that then gives rise to afflictions such as attachment, hatred, ignorance, pride, and so forth. And then we act out and have contaminated karma through our body, speech, and mind. And then, as a result of all of this, we have cyclic existence in samsara. We have all of these 3 types of suffering mentioned, the 6 types of suffering, 8 types of suffering, among them, within the realms of cyclic existence. The Buddha stated that this can all end. This is the superior truth of cessation and the third truth. The Buddha said if we abandon the origin, cessation could be actualized. But it would require us to generate a wisdom which is an antidote to the origin of suffering. And then the Buddha stated that this is the superior truth of path. If one wants to get rid of suffering, one gets rid of the cause. The cause is the grasping at the eye, and phenomena is being truly established. And by getting rid of that ignorance, getting rid of that confusion about reality, one could be liberated and achieve an abiding nirvana, a state of happiness free from suffering. And it would be permanently that state. The suffering would end permanently. It would be an absence. It would be a negative state. The absence of suffering would be permanent. There would no longer be the causes for it, so there'd be an absence permanently. And the Buddha stated that this is definitely an option. We feel so happy. The Buddha said that in dependence upon wisdom, I never, ever will suffer again. I have complete fearlessness. We feel so happy that all of these sufferings that we feel so connected to because we've experienced them, we know we'll experience them, we know the pain that they are, don't have to happen. The Buddha is the teacher that's like a doctor. The Dharma is like a medicine. We're like a sick patient. If we take the medicine the doctor gives us, we can be free from our illness. If we rely upon the path that the Buddha has taught us, if we rely upon a wisdom that negates the ignorance that gives rise to the suffering, then we won't have the suffering. I feel so happy. It's such a logical path. And then the Buddha said that the realization that I have requires more. The bliss that I experience every moment requires more. Same wisdom, but the motivation is going to require more. Now you want to get out of cyclic existence for yourself. You want to be free from cyclic existence because you've meditated on all the forms of suffering found in the First Noble Truth, and you know there's a path that will allow you to get rid of the suffering. What about your friends? What about others? And the Buddha said that we had to begin to think about others and then generate love and compassion for them, and then generate this idea that we cherish them more than ourselves. And this would be the true way to complete bliss and the true way to fulfill all our needs and all sentient beings' needs. The Buddha said you won't be complete. You'll have an incomplete level of being if you only desire happiness for yourself. And you'll be able to achieve an nirvana where you abide there in that state, but you won't be complete and you won't have fulfilled everyone else's needs. You think about those people who are so close to you, and you think about all the states of suffering that they have to endure, and they may or may not know about the Dharma. So the Buddha said that we start by thinking about this kind of this meditation on equanimity, where we first establish that our friends, enemies, and neutrals, or in the order of neutrals, friends, and enemies, are all beings that we would equally help. We meditate on, since beginningless time, we've had all of these different relationships with every sentient being. Sometimes they've been our closest friends, sometimes they've been our enemy, sometimes they've been complete strangers. We recognize the uncertainty of cyclic existence and see that our consciousness is the same consciousness. It's just a previous moment of consciousness and a previous form or formless state in which this consciousness abided in. But in those relationships, when we had the form and so forth, and we had companions, we've had every single relationship with every sentient being imaginable. So these labels are just childish labels that we make. And we see that since each and every one of them has been so kind, and we know that the ones who've been kind to us in this life we would want to help, we then become equally willing to help every one of these sentient beings. Just open-minded. The Buddha said we had to have this open-mindedness as a foundation. And then from that open-mindedness, we could begin to really dig in and meditate on past lives, beginningless lives, recognizing that all sentient beings have been our mother. All sentient beings have been our closest person to us. That person who took care of us when we were so vulnerable and no one else could. All sentient beings have had that relationship with us. There's not one among us, one sentient being in the whole universe who hasn't taken care of us. We recognize how kind they were to us, bathing us, feeding us, keeping us warm, making sure we had somewhere to live. Think about all that kindness they've shown us. And we think we wish we could repay that kindness. We wish we could give them some sort of happiness. Mundane happiness we know feels good, but we know that we learned in the truth of the suffering of change that mundane happiness, contaminated happiness, is actually suffering. So we want a little bit more for them. We start to think that the kind of happiness we'd like them to have is the kind of happiness that we're seeking. Just a little bit more. Pure happiness, pure freedom from suffering. We see them as so lovable. We see them as beings we would want to care for. So we'd want to care for them in the highest way. We start to think about how all beings are equally important. Every single sentient being wants happiness and wants to be free from suffering. We all experience pain. It hurts so bad. When we're happy, it feels so good, right? We all have that same commonality. And your pain and my pain, I can't say that when I feel it, it feels worse than when you feel it. We all equally want to be free from that pain and equally want happiness. We don't always go about it in the right way because of our ignorance, but we all want that. Sometimes we bump into each other, but it's because we're all just trying to get the same thing, happiness and freedom from suffering. Every single sentient being has Buddha nature. Everyone has the potential to be a Buddha. No one's more important than another. If you become Buddha before me, you'll be my protector and guide. You'll care for me more than anyone contaminated ever could. We're all equally important. When we look at the name self and other, it takes other to label self. It's independent upon being other that I say, I am me. But then you look at me and say, you are you. And there's no independently existent self or other. It's dependent upon other that I can label myself. There's no inherently existent self. There's no inherently existent other. Yet I see this duality. Everyone's equally important. Everyone has this equal nature, equal wish. Cherishing myself leads to negativities. Self-centered people, all the self-centered things that I've done where I didn't think about others usually led to suffering of some sort. I didn't feel good about it. I war up against people. It says in the text that we get out so many weapons and we wage war. And then when we don't get what we want, we sit and we blame everyone else. We felt so bad because of all of our actions, all of our selfishness. That's why we feel so bad, but we blame everyone else because the self-cherishing attitude wants to protect itself. But when we analyze it, all the suffering in the world comes from cherishing oneself. We think about the attitude which cherishes others and see how beautiful it is. We think about beings that cherish others more than themselves, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Think about that glow that he has. Think about Khenso Geshe Wandak, the glow that he had. He just wanted others to be happy and be free from suffering. It's all he wanted. Gandhi, Jesus, we think of all of these beings. What quality do they have that attracted so many people? And it was that quality of cherishing others, loving others. We see it in our world. We think about taking the suffering on of others, imagining that we're taking on the suffering of hell, hungry ghost animals, humans, demigods, and gods, friends, enemies, and neutrals, friends, neutrals, enemies. Imagine that we're taking on all of their sufferings. Imagine that we're giving them all of our happiness. From all this other understanding, we begin to say, I will cherish them more than myself. I will learn to cherish others more than myself. Now I cherish others more than myself. They've been so kind to me. In dependence upon all of the kindness sentient beings have shown me, I have all the resources that I have. In dependence upon people going to work and working so hard, there's lumber to build this house. In previous generations, beings who aren't alive, who are in other rebirths, who might fly by me as a bird, who are in my garden as a worm, previously planted the crops that allow me to eat. It's in dependence upon all sentient beings that I have what I have. All of my resources, all of my happiness is in dependence upon others' hard work, others' dedication to whatever it was they did. And I just see it as something that I bought, and I don't see the kindness that others have shown in everything that I use. May I see the kindness that others have shown in everything that I use. And from this incredible realization, we say, I will take on myself the task of bringing every single sentient being to a state of happiness that's free from suffering. I will be part of that. I'll be the cause for their happiness and freedom from suffering. And we recognize that we don't have that ability. We recognize that we're in the pit of cyclic existence, the jail of cyclic existence, like all other sentient beings. We don't have happiness. We are not free from suffering. How could we possibly help them all? They've been so kind to us. We want to help them all. We want to have that courage. We ask the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas to please give us the courage to help them all, but that's not enough. We have to be a Buddha to do it. We have to be a being that isn't incapable of freeing themselves in order to free others. The Buddha is the being that's abandoned all negativities and all has only excellent qualities, has perfect omniscience, perfect wisdom, perfect love and compassion, perfect power to help everyone. I can't even imagine certain beings. The Buddha said that the beings are such high number that my little mind can't even count them. How could I help them unless I'm Buddha? I must become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. May I become Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. May I perfect love and compassion. May I perfect my wisdom. May I perfect my power in order to become a Buddha who has all of those qualities for the sake of everyone, so I can fulfill all of my needs and all sentient beings' needs. And we apply this to every part of our practice, every part of hearing this teaching, every part of doing the prayers, all of our motivations. When we get up from this teaching, we think this, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, to fulfill my needs and all sentient beings' needs. So with this in mind, imagine that all of the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas are in the space in front of you. Imagine that Kensur Geshe Wandak, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Geshe Dorji Damdu, Geshe Aga, Geshe Lobsang Gompo, all these holy beings, Geshe Ma Tenzin Ladran La, all these holy beings are in the space in front of us, the profound view lineage, the extensive deeds lineage, the lineage of blessings and so forth, all these holy beings. Imagine as many as you possibly can in the space in front of you, and imagine that they're all so happy that we're assembled here, listening to the teachings on the stages of the path to enlightenment, that are really the only pathways that will provide us that complete freedom from suffering and the bliss that the Buddha experiences. So imagine that all the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas are so happy that we're doing this, because their only intention, their only wish is that we engage in the causes for our Buddhahood. And they see that we're doing that. Now imagine that all sentient beings are around us. Imagine that we've led them all here. Imagine that you have infinite hands that have grabbed all of these beings in the hell-hungry ghost, animal, human, demigods, and gods realms and brought them here. Imagine that they're all assembled around you. And now all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas become so happy. Khensa Geshe Wanok so happy. Buddha Shakyamuni, everyone, all are so happy because all sentient beings are here doing something that will make them become Buddhas. And imagine that all sentient beings in yourself have a white Om on your crown, a red Ah at your throat, and a blue Hum at your heart. White Om symbolizing body, red Ah symbolizing speech, blue Hum symbolizing mind. Imagine that you and all sentient beings have this syllable on your head, throat, and heart. Now imagine that from the bliss that all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas are experiencing as a result of seeing that all sentient beings are together, aren't doing what we would normally do, quarrel and so forth. We're here together, kind of moving in one vehicle towards Buddhahood. So everyone, they're so happy. All the gurus and Buddhist Bodhisattvas are so happy. And imagine that light rays in the color of white, red, and blue begin to radiate and transform into syllables. So imagine that the white light rays and nectars transform into white syllables Om. Imagine that they're raining down or snowing down on us and all sentient beings and dissolving into our crown, the Om at our crown, and all sentient beings' crowns, and transforming our negative body into a purified body. Imagine that red light rays and nectars are doing the same thing, but then transforming into red Ah, showering down, dissolving into our red Ah and all sentient beings' red Ah at our throats, and purifying our speech. Now imagine that blue light rays and nectars are showering down blue Hums, and then dissolving into our hearts and all sentient beings' hearts, and transforming our impure minds into pure minds. So imagine this visualization is taking place where all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas are showering us with white Oms, purifying our bodies, red Ahs, purifying our speeches, and blue Hums, purifying our minds. And I say ours and all sentient beings that are around us minds. Now with this visualization going on, we'll begin with the introductory prayers, beginning with the Heart Sutra. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered Samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination, and at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajaparamita should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation, there is no impurity and no purity, there is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I, dhatu, up to no mind, dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness, dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajaparamita, since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear, they transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of 3 times by means of Prajaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajaparamita mantra is said in this way. Deyada ongade ngade varagade varazangade bodhisandhyada ongade gade gade Baragade Barazangadi Bodhisattva Hongade Gade Baragade Barazangadi Bodhisattva Hongade Gade Baragade Barazangadi Bodhisattva Hongade Gade Baragade Barazangadi Bodhisattva. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Ala jube ne jo damba ne nguje du ju na yi du do jen dru abola ma yi bu jin zi ne song gan ro so la sha ze lo ga samara te shan ra samara be ga samara. Aga samara de chandara samara yambe di ata onga de gati paragati parasangati bodhisoa baba gonjo sonji gae de me doji je lobo doji mebo doji jewa doji dagi baje me do me je danji je den kori so gere en donja je je wa da me do no be jan dan je wa dan dong ba jong jin gong gong jo jo ji da shi de jang den da de le jo. Mandala offering as a request for teaching. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Idam Guru Radha Mandala Gamni Radhayami Sanye Jananda Ye Janala Shanju Badu Danyi Jasuji Dagi Jishe Jibe Sananji Drola Benji Sanje Jubasho Sanye Jananda Ye Janala Shanju Badu Danyi Jasuji Dagi Jishe Jibe Sananji Drola Benji Sanje Jubasho Sanye Jananda Ye Janala Shanju Badu Danyi Jasuji Dagi Jishe Jibe Sananji Drola Benji Sanje Jubasho. The one who is transformed into the reliable guide, motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings, the teacher Sugata and protector to you, I make prostrations. The one who has eliminated the web of conceptualizations and is endowed with the divine bodies of the vast and profound, who eternally shines forever forth the forever noble light rays, to you, the Buddha, I make prostrations. The Buddha does not wash the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. With folded hands I beseech the Buddhas of all directions to shine the light of Dharma for all bewildered in misery's gloom. If you are attached to this life, you are not a spiritual practitioner. If you are attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you are attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. May this teaching be heard and understood in the language of all sentient beings. All right. Hey everybody, here we are again. We made it through another meditation on the Four Noble Truths and bodhicitta, and we're all still here. And hopefully we're a little bit further along for it, right? So we said that we always start the teaching with this, quote from the great Sakya Lama Kunga Nyingpo, who says, if you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. So it's that mirror of the Dharma. What am I doing here today? Am I, trying to somehow, make this life better? It's really the mirror of the Dharma. What am I doing here today? Am I just trying to make this life better? Is that a long-range solution? Is that the wisest thing to do? Should that be my aim? Because I'm already learned that the happiness in cyclic existence is suffering. So does it make sense to seek more of that? Is that a wise decision? Is that what an intelligent person would do? Would I come here to learn how to get more suffering? So that wouldn't really make sense. And if it says you're attached to samsara, that means that, there are levels of suffering, right? So we first abandon, when we look at the teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity, we first start talking about the lower realms and how bad it could get for us. And we can see in the empirical world, we look around, we can see bugs, we can see slugs, we can see, all the varieties of the animal experience, if that's a potential for us. And how could we be so arrogant to think it couldn't get worse? So the Buddha said, oh, it definitely can, and taught us about these other realms that we can't even imagine the amounts of suffering that exist in, and said, this is all potentially something that can happen to you. So you have to understand that, no matter what you do within cyclic existence, you could have the potential to have to be, reborn into this next lower realm. And everything that you're experiencing now in this life is kind of already baked. So you better do something about your next life. And that's why it says if you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. Because spiritual practitioner starts at doing what I can about the things that I can do something about. And that's my future, because the things I'm experiencing now are results of something that I've already engaged in. It's baked in. What's happening to me right now and all the stuff and the suffering, and this is already something that I've done to make this happen in a previous life, right? Unless it's something like really, if it's suffering something horrific I've done in this life, I could possibly experience it in this life. But generally speaking, the things that we do in this life are going to be experienced unless they're humongously virtuous or humongously non-virtuous, either in the next life or in many, many lifetimes later. So I'm a result of something back there, right? And I can only do something about something forward. So Lama Tsongkhapa and Atisha and everyone says, start with thinking about how bad it could get next time, right? So start thinking about that, and then recognize that even if you get a good deal in cyclic existence next time, everything you think is happiness is suffering. So that's why, you end up if you're attached to samsara, you don't have renunciation. If you think there's anything good about something that could happen in samsara after you've learned that it's all suffering, even the happiness, then you aren't seeking something that transcends it. Renunciation isn't, I've got to just give everything good up. Renunciation is, I'm giving everything that's suffering up and only going for good. So everybody misconceives renunciation and thinks it's like, it's just this person who doesn't allow themselves to be happy. Renunciation is a person who's decided, I won't allow myself to suffer. That's the intelligence of renunciation. That's the wise renunciation, where the person says, okay, it can get worse than that. I don't want that. Worse than this. I don't want that. So they don't want the lower realms the Buddha talks about, the hell, hungry ghost, or animal. We see the animal. I don't want a lot of those things I see. You have no control. Even my dogs, who live like in a hotel, right? In a dog hotel paradise. They still don't get to eat when they want to eat. They don't get to go out exactly when they want. The second they think, I want to go outside, they can't go and like open the door, unlock it, and go outside. They're a victim of their birth, right? They have less control than we have. You can see that. You have to agree that this animal has a lot less control because of their limited scope and limited intelligence than we have to be able to perpetuate. So we see that it could get worse. So the Buddha says, let's get rid of that kind of idea, that we think that, could be, let's know that that's a potential thing that can happen. So we better focus on fixing that. So we're focused on our future life. If we're, trying to say, okay, in the future, I don't want the lower realm. Spiritual practice begins there. In my future life, I don't want the lower realm. Let me engage in virtue. So Rinpoche always said, what do we do to not have to have a lower realm rebirth? How do we, in this life, make sure that that doesn't happen? He said, we engage in going for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. We abandon the 10 non-virtuous activities, and we engage in ethical behavior. When we can, and when we have wavered, if we can't abandon, if we have engaged in a negativity related to the 10 non-virtues, if we haven't engaged in the ethics that abandons the 10 non-virtues, and we've made a mistake and we've done something non-virtuous, then we acknowledge that downfall. And the Buddha said, and Khenso Geshe Wandak says, that if we engage in those practices, that we would be able to be free from the lower realms of cyclic existence. And then if we check the rest of samsara out, check our existence out, we'll say this is pretty dissatisfying. And then we learn about the realms that are higher than us in cyclic existence and find out about how dissatisfying those are as well. And that's when we develop renunciation. We're renouncing suffering. We're saying enough is enough. I want to do whatever it takes to become liberated. So we get this desire day and night to be free from the sufferings of cyclic existence. Not day and night to say, I don't want to be happy. Let me live in this cave. Like we see these beings, these yogis that go live in a cave. And worldly people say, man, they're really suffering in that cave. But their mind is a palace, whereas our mind is a junkyard. So when we're in a palace, we feel like we're in a junkyard. But when a yogi's in a cave, they feel like they're in a palace because their mind is pure. And that's the difference. So if we can somehow change the way that we discriminate everything around us, our mind can turn into the mind that a yogi's mind is, where any kind of environmental circumstances seem pure and seem like a palace to them. And so renunciation, these yogis that renounce what looks like worldly life, and they don't have cars, and Khyentse Geshe Wandak didn't even know how to drive a car, or, wouldn't even know how to open up a bank account, really, like the technical details. He had some, but come on, people set them up for it. He didn't know the technical details about that, about how to do that. Because he had renounced, he had this just joy that radiated, because all he wanted to do was get out of cyclic existence. And he didn't need all of these other things to feel secure, if you will. He was able to be a refugee, where they just put him in an old British prison camp with a bunch of other refugees and feel secure and feel grounded. He was able to be at the end of his life and feel secure and feel grounded, because he knew he was going to shuck off a body, and his only deal was to get liberated. And it just became so, so clear that was the motivation and goal. Lori and I were talking this morning about Rinpoche, and you could just see this love and compassion when you got around him. He was just so focused on the path and on liberation. I was texting with Lobsang Dunyu also in India, where we'd see Rinpoche on the baby monitor with his flashlight at 2 a.m. and 3 a.m, just reading texts. As we got closer to his death, he put his mala down. He was still doing prayers and everything, but he wasn't reading his books as much. But in the first year and a half, he was just, you'd see him 10 sets of batteries he burned out, because he'd leave it on and pick it back up. And we'd just be mind boggled how he was still, at his age and his degree of learning and the 1,000 pages he had memorized, he was still reading the texts, because he knew that he had to at least exhibit what was going to be necessary for us all. And just, it was so clear that he had this renunciation. Anyone who knew him knew it. He'd just sit in his room on his bed and be totally content. And at any moment you walked in, that glow, that bliss would come over him, that you would just see in his eye. And what had he been doing all day? Sitting on the same bed, in the same room that wasn't very clean always, you know what I mean? It wasn't like this palace. He just sat there and he practiced, and that was paradise for him. And we don't find paradise even paradise when we get there. We'll find a problem with it, Oh man, but it was really beautiful, but the food was terrible. Right? Oh, it was an amazing trip, but it was so tough to blank, And then we look at somebody like a Khyentse Geshe Wandak, who doesn't matter where he is, any point in time, it's just happiness and bliss because of that control of the mind. So where does that control of the mind come from? So I wanted to talk a little bit today, before we get started with where we are in the book proper. We're in the book proper on, identifying karma and so forth. General characteristics of karma, if we're getting technical, I believe, is the section that we're on, because it's after refuge. I feel like we've satisfied the points of refuge enough that we could move on to that. But before I do that, I want to talk about what this thing we're doing beforehand, this meditation on the breath, meditation on Buddha Shakyamuni. It's very, very short. And I just don't want to, deceive anyone into thinking that that's it, right? You do it for a couple seconds and then you do this for a couple seconds and then you move on. Because I think that it's a point of emphasis that needs to be emphasized more about cultivating calm abiding meditation. I think that it is something that we shouldn't focus solely on. It's something that if we focus solely on and we don't study enough, it can be very deceptive. It can cause us, and I've noticed it before I even got into Buddhism, very elevated states of happiness in the body when you do a lot of breathing meditation. Just because you're starting to, function in a more proper way and you're aligning all of your winds and channels, and you can be kind of fooled by it. So you have to really, really study too. And kind of combine both of these things. But in Pabunga Rinpoche's Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, when you get to the back section, when it gets into calm abiding and, getting serenity, and getting the mind to a point where it can focus single pointedly, not only does it give you a bunch of techniques to use in order to get that ability. Everybody who's on Instagram, you're going to shut off in a second. I won't be able to move in and restart. So if you go to the Tara Mantra Facebook page, we're on there live right now. Or if you go to our Buddhist Center website and just click on the live link, you'll just appear on the screen. So just anybody on Instagram, just to let you know, it's going to shut off and I probably won't restart it. So if you're interested in hearing more of me talking about Buddhism, go to Tara Mantra or that other place. So Pabunka Rinpoche at the end of the Liberation of the Palm of Your Hand section, where it's in, calm abiding, kind of following the Lam Rim Chemo, Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. We know that, the calm abiding and special insight happen later on in the text, the main details about it. And Pabunka, gives us all of these techniques that we can use to calm our minds down to the point where we could focus on something, one object, because of the arisal of a mental and physical pliancy, this kind of like bliss that would come over the mind and the body. We could rest our mind solely on one object of observation only for like 4 hours straight. That would mean we got there. That would mean we got there. But in the meantime, what is happening? What are these tools doing that are allowing us to be more successful in our practice? So Pabunka says not only do these concentrations help us in these higher stages to analyze emptiness, because that's the point. We want to get to the point where we have enough concentration ability to focus on emptiness so we can get what we call the union of calm abiding and special insight that happens on the path of preparation, where we can single-pointedly have emptiness as our object of observation and then have a non-conceptual realization of that comes from this very, very bright wisdom and this very, very calm ability of the mind to look at it. And these two kind of merge, and then one can directly realize emptiness. It's compared to, the wisdom and the analysis and the understanding of our studies is kind of like the brightness of the lamp. If we were in a dark room and wanted to read a book, like the brightness of a candle that's burning, we would need it really, really bright if we wanted to read a book in a room. But the brightness wouldn't be enough. If there was wind blowing and it was doing this, it'd be really hard to read that book. So not only do we need brightness, but we need stability. So if we have brightness in a flame and we have stability, it illuminates the whole room. If we have brightness of wisdom and the stability of calm abiding, it illuminates our mind to be able to see emptiness. So we really need both of these qualities in order to perceive reality directly. So when we engage in this practice where we're breathing in through our nose and breathing out and counting, this would be one type of meditation that we could do to adapt and get to the point where we could focus our mind more and more and more and more and more. But when we, this is a very, very good tool, Pabunka Rinpoche says initially to use, because as we are, getting more and more able to tell our mind what to do, our mind becomes more and more pliable. We're able to say, okay, mind, do this. Okay, mind, do this. So Pabunka says we eventually want it to focus on emptiness, but we want to realize the human life of leisure and opportunity. We want to realize, death and impermanence. We want to be able to realize, all of these refuge and so forth, right? All these topics that we go through. We need to realize these topics. And if our mind is calm enough to analyze them, then we won't be thinking about other stuff. So if we are able to harness our mind in, because we've been telling it what to do, to focus only on this, focus only on that, when we begin to allow it to analyze and move around, we can tell it, only analyze this, only analyze that. So you can see how as you get better and better at concentration, in a single-pointed fashion, It enhances your mind's familiarization with being told what to do, so that when you do analysis of something, when you're allowing your mind to move around, it's not going, oh yeah, I'll definitely die. Life is always being subtracted from. I'm always moving closer and closer to my death. It's getting closer and closer to 10. I'm going to have to do something at 10:30. Well, what do I have to do at noon? It's close to noon. Oh, today I think I'm going to go and get something to eat at this restaurant. You see how the mind can just stray right off of what you're trying to do. But if you have a lot more familiarity with telling it what to do and with seeing through the introspection, the spy in your mind that you're getting good at using when you're developing single-pointed concentration, that spy in your mind is looking at your analysis too and seeing if you're moving off of it. So if you only engage in analytical meditation, your mind can just be busy in the midst of it, and you're not giving yourself your full potential to analyze. You're mixing your analysis kind of with your other stuff because you haven't harnessed in your mind. You haven't learned how, when your mind gets lost, to put a leash on that dog and bring it back home. As the great Geshes say, you haven't learned how to tie that elephant up of your mind that's, in the monkey, you haven't learned how to do that. I don't know. That was a very strange beep that came from the wall. So you haven't learned how to do that. So it's going to creep. That inability to fix your mind is going to creep into your analysis. So if we can complement our analytical meditation with always making sure every single day, if we're going to meditate, if we're going to do practice every single day, take 5 minutes of every single day, 10 minutes of every single day, and try to put your mind on one object. One object. It says it's great. You can begin with the breathing and breathing in and out. Kensler Geshe Wandak always said that was great introduction, especially if you have a lot of conceptuality, if your mind is like really busy. Because the breathing is something we're always doing, it's something that we can really, it's easy for us to focus on because we are breathing. So it's happening, so we can focus in on it. When we focus on, trying to make Buddha Shakyamuni in our mind, that's something we have to kind of, we don't have as much of a frame of reference for it, right? Because we're not always thinking of Buddha Shakyamuni. We're always breathing, so it's something we can always bring our mind back to see because we're breathing. So it's easy to use. There's a lot of movement with it too, though. So it's kind of hard to get single pointed with it. My opinion. Maybe opinions of some other great masters, but my opinion, if you use that as your final tool to get calm abiding, maybe a little tougher. And I think that ultimately, once you get some familiarity with that, mostly you would see that folks change to a front object of observation, such as Buddha Shakyamuni. You'll find that in the text, or some other object of observation. Very interesting. Rinpoche said it could even be self-generation. Not a lot of detail, but you could get that from a self-generation. The texts say you can get that from self-generation meditation. But generally speaking, front generation, object of observation, 2 feet away, eye level, right? Arm length away, it says, at eye level. Not big, because it will become a problem, later on. You want to be able to focus on something, a couple inches tall, like right here in front of you, and you get more and more detailed with it, beginning with a general outline. When I don't mean outline like the books, like the outline of the figure. Lama Tsongkhapa says, don't get obsessed with detail. Get the detail in as much as you can. Now focus on that. Next time, get a little more detail. Focus on that. You're not training your mind to be like the best artist that ever became. You're training your mind to think about one thing. And if you're just being Mr. or Mrs. Imagination, you're just playing. You're playing around in your mind and painting pictures and making them blue and making them this. Lama Tsongkhapa says, paint it up as best you can. Get the image as best you can in front of you. And then focus only on that. However good you got it. Leave it. However good you got it, Refine it as you get better and better. Sometimes they say, look at the face, and get good at that, okay? Refine that. Look at the hand. Get good at refining that eye on Tara's hand, right? Or something like that. Whatever your object of observation is. I personally asked Rinpoche if I could use Tara, so I use Tara, as my front generation object of observation. Funny, right? I'm saying everyone. Imagine Buddha Shakyamuni, but I think Buddha Shakyamuni is the more universally accepted front generation aspect that people do with single-pointed concentration. But really, I just want to tell you, you can use all Buddhas are Buddhas. And if you have some specific affinity for another Buddha and you can visualize it easier, all we're trying to do is be able to only visualize one thing. And if that object is a Buddha, it has all those excellent qualities of merit that you would gain from Buddha Shakyamuni. Buddha Shakyamuni isn't a higher Buddha than Tara. There isn't, Kala Chakra isn't higher than Buddha Shakyamuni. Kala Chakra is Buddha Shakyamuni. So it's very interesting. We shouldn't get too caught up in, attaching to something if we have more of an affinity for something else that will serve as a better tool for us and our individual continuum. Who knows? Maybe in a previous life you had almost single-pointed concentration with Yamantaka. Why does Yamantaka keep coming up, right? Maybe that's your object of observation, and then you don't have to paint it as much, right? You don't have to do as much painting. Maybe it's better. So the main point is, what did Atisha say? Find one virtuous focal object, right? Put your mind on it, and there's so many reasons why we want to be able to establish this. Atisha says because you can't get the clairvoyances without it, but you can't become Buddha without it, right? There's no possible way to see emptiness without calming your mind down enough to focus on one thing. And the only way you will learn to calm your mind down to focus on one thing is by calming your mind down and focusing on one thing. It's like if you have the ignorance of how to calm your mind down, you've got to fill it with the wisdom of how to calm your mind down and familiarization of how to calm your mind down. So the teachers say, take one object, put it an arm length away, and then we learn, we get this wisdom that tells us, how to do it. And then we do it and we do it and we do it and we do it and we do it. And I can tell you that it will certainly become easier to do. But Geshe Dorje Damdu says, you think it's harder to, work 8 hours and, having all this really busy mind work and filling out forms and so forth, or sitting down for maybe 10 minutes or an hour and trying to focus only on one thing. What makes your mind more tired? What's like filling out all these different forms or just trying to focus on one thing? We can see our mind's tendency is to just be busy. So it's real easy. Oh, I'm a busy mind. I'm just going to study. I'm going to only learn. I'm just going to fill it with stuff. I'm going to think about stuff. I'm going to think about stuff. And I find that it's real easy to get lost without that kind of ability to harness it. Even when I'm doing analytical meditation, it's real easy to just kind of trick myself into thinking I'm kind of still in the meditation, and allow my mind to slowly dance its way out the door, slowly backing out the door, and closing it, and suddenly my mind's onto, I can't believe that this person holds this view on TikTok or something, right? Like when I'm supposed to be thinking about my problem, right? The problem with my view. My view is the issue. Your view is not my issue, right? We were thinking about how in the West we look for this perfect guru who will fix us, right? And then, we see, they've, oh my gosh, they really, I can tell, right? I can tell they've really got these realizations and man, I just want to be near them because I can tell. Well, what are you doing, right? Their view can't fix you at all. If they have enough education and know how to teach, they may have the greatest view in the world, not know how to teach anything. They can't help you by sitting over there with the greatest view that ever happened in samadhi, right? If they don't know how to teach, right? What, or they don't want to teach, or you don't have the karma for them to teach. What do you get, right? So we have to really just try to mature our own minds. And we have to put that work in that's going to be necessary. When we look at Khyentse Geshe Wandak, I've been thinking about him so much. And Lori just posted a darn video on Facebook, Go to Tara Mantra, with us, going through Chatfield Hollow, and I was pushing him. And I just remember just how wonderful he was. And you just see all the pictures of him and you see that glow. And you think, man, was that something that just kind of happened out of laziness? Did he just look at a few things and because he's kind of Buddha-like got there? No, let's take a look for a second at Rinpoche's life. Rinpoche is born in Kham in eastern Tibet. Village. Very, very middle of nowhere, right? There's some monasteries around, but it's a secluded area. No electricity, right? Yaks and, heating. It's very cold, in the winter there. Of course, tons of snow. We're in Kham, eastern Tibet. No electricity. Heating with cow dung and fires and so forth. And Rinpoche is 10 years old and wants to become a monk so badly. So he starts studying with, the greatest teachers that are there, right, in his village area. And you have Badzingom Monastery there. And Rinpoche starts to study and very, very quickly is outgrowing his village because he's day and night studying. I mean, we've heard so many different stories. He actually gets in a fight with one of his brothers about who could carry the book up the mountain, right? You know the story. He and his brother are arguing about, because they have to go up to the top of the mountain or something and herd, and watch after the semchen, the animals, the different goats and whatever animals, sheep and so forth they had at the time, whatever animals they had. That's not the detail, but they're going up, and while they're watching the animals, they're memorizing their texts, and he and his brother start to fight over who is going to be the one to carry the book, right? 10 years old, 8, 10, 12 years old. You get it, right? So they start to fight over it. And the book, and sometimes you maybe see how they have the kind of wood case that gets wrapped around the book, The book drops and it breaks, the case around the book. And the teacher's there, and they both are terrified, Rinpoche says, because they think, we're in trouble, because, if you've been around Tibetan monks and monasteries, you see that when a little monk isn't doing the right thing, they let him have it. They are very quick to correct wrong behaviors, no problem. So Rinpoche said they were both so scared that Genla, I think it was Apu, was going to yell and scream. And he didn't. And he said, no, you have to share. He said, one of you will carry it to the top and the other one will bring it to the bottom. And then he delegated the responsibilities. And Rinpoche always talked about how kind his teacher was to not dissuade him, because he later said it was so good that he found this thing so wonderful and precious that he wanted to be the one to hold it. His teacher saw that light in him and had that skillful means to see that he was willing to fight over this thing. Now, maybe kids just like their stuff, right? But the teacher had such a broader perspective, right? Could see that this student was outgrowing the village and was willing to fight to be able to be the one to carry this text to the top of the hill. This isn't a lazy person. This isn't someone who doesn't find any value in the Dharma. Gets to be, old enough, 18 years old, and he goes to his teachers and says, please teach me Abhisama Alamkara, and no one can. There's no one who can teach the Abhisama Alamkara in a clear way. He said, he said, Genla tried. He did the best they could. Rinpoche was already seeing, being able to understand things. And he said, Genla tried. We'd memorized some of it. Because I asked him, what did you prepare with the 5 books, right? You memorized a bunch of things. In the village, they're not debating, right? What'd you prepare? And he said, I memorized everything I possibly could. And I got whatever I could from my teachers. But I needed more. Everyone could see I needed more. So I walked for 3.5 months to Lhasa with a couple people and a donkey. donkey with a bunch of beans and, different dried items on it to keep them alive for 3.5 months. Walked to Drepung. And then when he gets to Drepung, starts studying and is quickly, coming from this village, quickly up to speed and holding his own, debating with all the great scholars. Khenser Pema Jetsun is the abbot of Losaling at this point, Rinpoche's teacher. Then we have Gen Uzir and Gen Lachap, who are from Goa Kamsen, who are Rinpoche's teachers. And then he's receiving all of these teachings from all these incredible lamas we hear about. And then 1959 happens. He's probably, 25, 26 years old, however, and bombs start dropping on Lhasa. Now, what is his number one concern? When, if bombs start dropping on your house, what's your number one concern at that moment? Think about it. His number one concern was to figure out how to keep studying. We've got to get out of here because we're not going to be able to keep studying. He could have taken his robes off and just pretended or whatever, right? They were bombing monasteries. We've got to get out of here. We've got to keep studying. Through a war, seeing people dying around him. Got to keep studying. I have to realize this Buddhahood. It's the only thing that can help me. It's the only thing that would be satisfying is Buddhahood. Bombs are dropping around me. The only thing that'll satisfy me is Buddhahood. And they get to India somehow. Who knows how? You hear the story and you're like, what? Story of Geshe Gompo, getting shot with a machine gun and them getting to where they were going, and he took his shantup and went like this, and a machine gun bullet fell out of it. Imagine that. You get to India, now you're completely a PTSD. Imagine this. Your teachers, Rinpoche's teacher is killed. All you care about now is Dharma. You're not like, oh, I have all these needs and I'm suffering. Oh, you should see how bad. No. Now India puts you in a British prison camp. You think, okay, I have no idea where I am. I'm in a place that's hot. I used to live in a place that's cold. People are getting tuberculosis all around me, 10% of the people. People are dying. All I care about is practicing Dharma. Rinpoche almost dies. Dzong Rinpoche comes in and gives him a Waitara initiation. Rinpoche believes that he was cured of whatever illness he had because of his Waitara retreat that he did. All he cared about was being able to practice more Dharma. He didn't give up. Geshe Lobsang Gompo said, Rinpoche needs to live. He's one of the greatest scholars of this generation. Go find Dzong Rinpoche, who's at that point in time like a deity to the, like Dalai Lama's teacher, high tantric realized master. And he's alone in Rinpoche's room with him, with Geshe Gompo there, giving this Waitara initiation, because Rinpoche just wants to stay alive to practice Dharma. They don't stay there a few weeks in a prison camp, in a refugee place. People want to escape prison. They just stayed there and kept studying. They could have left. They could have figured something else out to do. But they just kept studying in that British prison camp with all of the resources that we would think you need not there. And then when we watched the documentary on Baksa, and so many monks were saying, oh my God, it was so terrible. It was awful. I had suffered so greatly. One of the chanting masters of Sarah Monastery hung themselves. The Rinpoche and other monks came out to see this kind of suffering. He was a great, great, great chanting master. Some people couldn't even handle the human suffering going on, let alone keep practicing Dharma. But Rinpoche saw that that's the only thing that could help. 10 years he stayed in there, and when I asked him, how was it? What was that like? How did you handle it? It was like this. It was wonderful. Like this. He went like this. It was wonderful. And I was a little bit taken back. He said, it's where I did most of my studies into Prajnaparamita and Madhyamaka. It's when I really, really looked at it. You imagine? Our minds are so quick to be like, oh, I'm having a hard day. I can't read today. I do it all the time. You know, I go downstairs really early and I, give up. I know my mind's just like, going too many places and I'm just so quick to give up, right? Not give up, but you know what I mean. I'm just so quick to just throw in the towel. And we need to just focus on the willingness these masters had. When we say we want to be like that master over there, it's not a rabbit's foot. They're just showing what we could do. Rinpoche was just showing us, you can have this right here, but there's no shortcut to this. Look what I did. Buddhas come into this world and emanate and show us exactly what we have to do in order to become Buddhas. They don't leave details out. Rinpoche showed us so clearly, whether you consider Buddha or Bodhisattva or just someone like us that woke up as a human being and calm and just was a little bit sharper, right? However you want to look at it. Exactly what had to be. If he's showing us what had to be done, it means that previously he had to do that to become a Buddha. If he's, actually doing it and it's not showing us what needs to be done, that's what he actually had to do to be Khenser Geshe Wandak the way he was to present to us. There's no other slick trick. He would have told me, I promise, because I looked for it. He would have told me. I know he had so much love for me and so much compassion for me. He would have told me. No question. He saw me in the lowest depths and the highest of heights. He would have told me that highest of heights is the suffering. The lowest of lows is suffering. And here's this simple trick to get rid of all of it. There isn't. He gets out of Buxa. How do you get out of Buxa? Oh, now he gets to leave the British prison camp. Finally, right? He gets out. What do? They tell him, you're going to go to this place. It's in South India. And there's going to be a new Drepung and a new Sarah and a new Ganden. And Sarah's going to be over here, and Ganden's going to be over here. And Drepung and Sarah and Ganden will be close. Sarah's going to be a little further away, and it's going to be like paradise. And when you get there, all of these people with faith will be there. Like they thought there would be parades. They thought trumpets, right? They thought there was these established areas that were all set. So everybody gets there. They get everybody the funds to get transportation there, and they get there, and there's just chopped trees in the field. No trumpets, no buildings. Now they're in tents. In South India, where there's cobras, wild animals you can't even imagine, right? Lions, tigers, and bears, oh my, right? Now you're in a tent. You just went from a British prison camp to a tent. So what are you doing? Studying day and night. Studying day and night so much that Geshe Lobsang Gompo, who is your student, says, I'm going to go work the fields for you so you don't have to stop studying. That's how Rinpoche became the way he was. I know all of these stories. I could go on for 20 hours about Rinpoche stories. He told me all of them. About Shakugen Nima and Khenser Pema Jetsun. And it's so beautiful. Their reincarnations are now doing amazing things in this world. They're in Ladakh right now together. Khenser Pema Jetsun and Shakugen Nima's reincarnations are now together and both doing amazing things for the Dharma. It's just so incredible. But all of these stories, so then they rebuild Drepung. Just hundreds of people. And now Drepung is this beautiful place you can go visit in South India because of Genjatso and Geshe Lobsang Gompo and Khenser Geshe Wandak, Khenser Pema Jetsun, and all of these incredible lamas. We come from this lineage of royalty. Rinpoche's teachers, Khenser Pema Jetsun, Zong Rinpoche, Trijung Rinpoche, Shaka Gen Nyingma, Ling, Trijung, Shaka Gen Nyingma, Khenser Pema Jetsun, Zong Rinpoche. And then all the other incredible lamas. But think about that. I just mentioned, mostly Dalai Lama's teachers. This is the royalty from which this nectar of Dharma comes to us. And Rinpoche continues to study, gets done with his Geshe degree. Everyone agrees he's like the greatest Madhyamika scholar around. Larampa #1, undeniable. Dalai Lama comes to him and says, please teach at my monastery. Then for 17 years, he teaches 7 classes a day. 7 classes a day, every day. Can you imagine? To anybody, to monks, nuns, lay people, Venerable Thupten Chodron when she was in India. I mean, back in the, way before any of us, some of us, most of us met the Dharma, right? Back in the very beginning days, Rinpoche was teaching everyone, and then he comes here and teaches and teaches and teaches and teaches us. And then we watch him at the end of his life, he's still studying with a flashlight on a baby monitor. I mean, just incredible. Incredible. The last hours of his life, I'm talking to him about, is this prayer okay for me to say in your ear when you're dying? This is the last conversations that we're having. And he's lucid. He's not like, oh, I'm dying. He's just confirming that that's what he would like to hear. There's no fear in his eyes whatsoever. Just bliss. Just bliss. And such clarity that I'm locked in with him and just able to ask him these things. And he's able to, with such clarity and presence, be there. And medically, the shit had hit the fan. I mean, everything that could be beeping is beeping. He's just like this. But that's because of all of this work we talk about. It's because every day he woke up and said, I have this human life of leisure and opportunity that's impermanent. I'm moving so quickly towards birth, aging, sickness, and death, and separating from the pleasant, meeting from the unpleasant, not getting what I want, and having more aggregates, having this body that's a basis of suffering, moving so quickly towards that at all times. I got to do something today, right now. I have this moment. I don't know if I'll be alive in 5 minutes. We definitely got some more years out of Rinpoche. I don't think anybody with a brain would disagree with that, based on, the trying to do that took place. And his wish that we go as hard as possible. What a teaching that was for all of us too, right? I'm in a hospital and I say, Rinpoche, what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to, because someone had just talked about hospice, and I'm a translator. I'm not, an influencer. I'm just at that point, and at the end of Rinpoche's life, I really pulled all influencer out. I needed to make sure that it was all exactly right. And I said to him, do you want to just go, peacefully as we would talk in the West? Or, we were talking about whether he would be, have like the compressions and all of this. And the doctors were being very specific about, if you do that, you could break someone's bones. And he said, break my bones. If I have another moment of a human life, I want it. They were talking about, DNRs, resuscitation and so forth. And if, you may be brought back to life, but you'll have all these things and you'll suffer till you die. He said, well, I'll suffer so I have another moment of human life, so I can practice Dharma. That's the gift he gave us. It doesn't matter what's happening. You practice Dharma, and you practice it as long as you can, every moment that you can. When Lama Tsongkhapa says renunciation is defined as day and night wanting liberation in the 3 principal paths, how can we say that person hadn't realized that in their mind when we just see that? How can we say renunciation isn't real? We just see that. We see somebody so intent on liberation, so intent on Buddhahood. Someone who would stay around anyone to help them. had no bias whatsoever. None. No bias. Was very matter of fact about who people were and how they were, but no bias based on that. That was the thing that always blew my mind. He could be so matter of fact about the way someone was, the nature of them, that they had this way about them, but then have no bias based on that information. There was empirical information, you have to rely upon yourself and others. Other people's are seeing you interact too, right? And if everyone agrees that, you're a certain way, that could be true. But most of us then say, oh, I don't like that person because they're this. But a bodhisattva like Rinpoche says, they're this and I love that person. What a difference. Even about myself, I'd hear him be very matter of fact about Jeff, and I'd be like, whoa. And he'd be like, yeah, he's my translator. He's one of my main students. I would just be like, whoa. There's just such a level of unbiased and such an understanding that Lama Tsongkhapa says in the Illuminating the Intent, that you begin to see sentient beings just as reflections of their karma. Like a moon on a lake. And that lake's moving. Always moving. That impermanence is always moving. This reflection of their karma that we're seeing is just changing. Always moving and changing. There's nothing to judge. It's just a reflection of karma. It's not Jeff that's so bad. Previously, Jeff wasn't Jeff. Maybe I was Pete or whatever. Pete the jerk. And now there's this reflection that appears to be Jeff that Jeff didn't really do. I'm just like not a victim, because it's the same continuum of consciousness. But in a sense, it's a reflection of Pete's actions. With the name Jeff doing all this stuff that Pete's making him do. Kind of a rough way to explain karma, and it could be misinterpreted, but I think you understand what I mean. In a previous life, I was Pete the jerk, and I killed someone. Right? And now I have a short lifespan. It's not because of what Jeff did. That's why we have to get rid of this idea of Jeff. Jeff's so out of control. And that's the problem the Buddha had. This Jeff's out of control. Jeff's having all these experiences, and the world is believing it's Jeff's fault. And Jeff is believing that he has this inherent kind of feature, clings to it, doesn't feel changeable, but it's just a reflection of this karma that's taking place. And there isn't any inherent existence in any of it. And the Bodhisattva sees not only this is just a reflection of karma, that there's just dependent origination coming on. And the Bodhisattva sees, oh, I'm naming this as yelling. Oh, this reflection of karma, I'm naming this as praising me. Oh, this reflection of karma, I'm naming this as they're saying something boring. It doesn't have any inherent existence of praising or as boring. It's a reflection of karma coming at me. It's not Jeff, it's Pete. It's very interesting. There is no Jeff that could possibly create that karma. There's no inherently existent Jeff or Pete. So they start to see this interplay of dependent origination being like a show. And even though they're seeing it, they're like a magician. That even though they create an illusion and they see it as they cut a body in half, they know there's no body that was cut in half because they know it's a trick. When you come out of seeing emptiness directly, you don't see everything as emptiness. You just know better. You still perceive things in the way that is actually incorrect. Just like a magician who stands in front of, right? Like if a magician's tricks work, right? If it's able to fool an audience, the magician would have to stand where the audience is and be able to see a body cut in half. Likewise, a bodhisattva can see all of these things that appear to be going on and they look like it, but then know better because of the emptiness. Just like the magician knows they made that trick. The bodhisattva knows they're making this subjective experience. There's no objective reality happening. It's just a subjective experience happening. The bodhisattva can see that. And that's how they get control of the emotions and reactions, because of knowing reality. That's how wisdom stops non-virtue, because there's nothing to do about it. It's merely collections. It's merely illusions of waves coming up and down that are being named and portrayed as something, as inherently this or that, but they aren't. So, in order to allow our minds to get to the point where we could be like Khensa Rinpoche, that you could see, yes, this is the nature of that, and be unbiased, you have to calm your mind down enough to see there's a reflection and not a substantially existent enemy standing there yelling at you. If you need to be able to slow your mind down just to see the impermanence of it, imagine what you need to be able to do to see the emptiness of it, the emptiness of the impermanence of it, right? It's just going to take a very controlled mind to, in that moment, be able to almost see it in slow motion happening and analyze it. So that's really when we can calm our minds down. Not only will we be able to study and focus, analyze and focus, our reactions change, because we have control of our mind, and we're saying, no, not being fooled by that. One moment of anger destroys all my virtue. I'm not going to be controlled. Why would I get angry at something that's a reflection, right? Why would I be so angry at something that wasn't inherently existent as this or that? Who is there to be angry at it? So this emptiness of self and phenomenon, being able to see that there is no objectively independent existent you apprehending it. There is no objectively independently existent thing coming at you. It's a subjective experience. And if it's a subjective experience, then the subject, the clearer and the clearer the subject is about the experience, the less the experience can affect the mind. So that's why we're trying to throw these little techniques out to learn how to calm our mind down and be able to focus on a single object. It's in order to be able to cut the root of cyclic existence slowly, to be able to, gauge what's happening around us in a realistic way, instead of misapprehending everything. We're already starting at a deficit because our sense consciousness isn't an intelligent one. Our eyes just collect all the real data, put it in our mind, and then our mind discriminates it, right? Imagine if your mind's out of control, what that discrimination's taking place when someone's yelling at you, right? It's just discriminating it as, oh, I hate this person, push them away, God, they won't leave, I'm so full of stress, right? It just really disturbs us at all times. So that's enough out of me about all of that stuff. I hope that puts little bits of seeds in your mind about how we would become Buddhas, how we would become like Khensa Geshe Wandak, how we would be able to transform into these beings that we have so much respect for, that seem to have something that we don't have, how we would transform into that. And what we don't have is the foundation of the practices and the effort that they put in. They put in just so much effort. Geshe Dorje Damdu today was talking, the Geshes that really, really are invested spend about 16 hours a day for 20 years. Full stop. That's their practice. 16 hours a day for 20 years. He said because, when they have lunch, they're all arguing and debating as they're eating lunch, and then they go back to their room and they're memorizing and thinking about what they had, and then they have to go to their putti again, and then they have to do all the prayers for their individual kamsins, and then they do the debate, 6 hours a day or so of debate alone. So he was saying, it's about 16 hours a day, for 16, 20 years, just to get that name you hear everyone has, this Geshe name, and then to get the Larampa Geshe degree, it's like 6 more years of intensive tests, and once you get to the last 2 years, you can't miss even a mark on an answer. They kick you out of the Larampa chants. So it's like literally perfect scholars. When you see Larampa next to a name, there's no marks that they were given in an answer. After the 6 years of extra studies and tests that they have to do that others don't. So when you see this name Larampa, that means, whoa, that's not normal. So really respect the amount of effort that these beings put in. And I just want to thank all of you for listening. I encourage everybody every single day to, can I send us a link for the Dalai Lama's talk this evening? I can. I will do that, yes. But just so you know, all you do, you go to YouTube, go to your bar on Safari or whatever your phone, put YouTube in. Then when you get on YouTube, search bar, Dalai Lama Live. Then it'll take you right to a thing and it'll say upcoming, and you just click on it. And there'll literally be a countdown. Because sometimes he starts a little early, sometimes a little later. So I believe it's at 11 p.m. tonight, but we've seen it go on like at 10 when it says that. So we always just turn it on the TV, and then all of a sudden you'll hear chanting, and you'll know it's on. And then the Dalai Lama will be walking, to his throne, and that takes like 15 or 20 minutes. But I know who's asking, so I'll make sure I send you the link. Once I find it, I'll go do that. So you have an easy way to just click on it. But anytime you just put in Dalai Lama Live, and I think even tomorrow's teaching is there, like pending. So they'll even put like the next one up too, and it'll count down for like, I looked at it last night and there was a 33-hour countdown on, because I started to get worried because of the difference in times in India. I was like, which date? And I wanted to see if I was missing it. And it said 33 hours until the first one. So that was last night. Or yesterday afternoon or something. So enough out of me about that. Okay, so it's on the Tara Mantra Facebook page. The link is there. And really, everybody check out Tara Mantra Facebook. You'll find so many teachings and pictures of Rinpoche, rather. Maybe over 100 pictures of Rinpoche. And we're always trying to, all these teachings are posted on there now. And we try to just put some fun stuff up now and again. So thank you all. Anybody have any questions? I can kind of see Facebook right now. So if somebody has a question, I could answer it. Okay. Very, very good. So let's do the concluding prayers. I want to thank everybody for listening so closely. Thank you on all the different applications. Thank you, everybody on Zoom. Everybody's hanging in there, I see, so I appreciate it. I know some of this information can get technical at times, but there's really no way around it. When we saw last class about how you could misinterpret the Heart Sutra by reading it directly and not having a foundation of teaching, and then literally spend your whole life doing something that will not eradicate your suffering, we see how important studying is. We see how important that being satisfied with kind of partial instructions could get us to partial enlightenment. But incomplete enlightenment isn't anything but suffering, because it's contaminated. There's no, liberation is either liberated or not liberated. And if you are not liberated, you are going to have to suffer according to the teachings, because we see that every form of happiness that we have in our kind of realm of experience turns into some sort of suffering. Our new car breaks and turns into an old piece of junk. Our relationships, either one of us passes away or we get separated because of some sort of disagreement, right? There's always this internal mechanism for kind of self-destruction of our happiness. And that doesn't mean we don't try to go be happy. We don't sit and be depressed about it. But if we know the nature of our happiness will turn into something else, then when it happens, we're not so surprised. We don't go into a state of depression because we know it's the state of the world that we live in, the one we're born into. This body and this basis of physical and mental basis that we're born into is subject to that. It's not some mystical reality that the Buddha said. Take a look at your life. Have you found anything that is a form of happiness that doesn't turn into some sort of suffering in some way? And when that separation happens, that's going to be such an ultimate suffering. Death is going to occur. We're moving so quickly towards it. Everything that we love is dying right now. And the more we understand that, when that occurs, the depression and the sadness and everything that can happen will hopefully be lessened. And if that is lessened, then we'll have more opportunity to advance ourselves spiritually and help others around us. So that's what I've been able to find out after these, 27 years. I have very, very little realization, but a lot of faith in this because it's a logical process. And it was never told me, just believe this because it's true. I was told by my teacher, don't believe this. It is true, but don't believe it until you figure it out with logic, analysis, reasoning, and so forth, because I don't want stupid students, because stupid students don't get enlightened. The Buddhists don't wash away the sins with water. They don't give us realizations. They don't take away suffering. They teach us the truth, and then we figure it out and figure out whether it's reality or not. Is all my happiness turned into suffering or not? Is there an I here that I can really grasp at that's more important than a you? We need to figure out whether it's true or not. And the Buddha has given us all this logic and reasoning to figure out if it's true or not. No blind faith, no magic wand, no magic rabbit. Anyone can say they're Santa Claus, but then you find out it's not true. You have to find out if what the Buddha said is true or not. And when you investigate it, right? And when you check and see that you can't negate the ultimate nature of reality and the way that the concealed truth of conventional reality is presented, then throw yourself into a method that will actually make you happy permanently. That's all. So that's the teaching of Lord Buddha. Figure out how this empirical world is flawed. Figure out that there's a potential for more. Look at your consciousness and see that you won't be able to find a beginning or an end. And see what you want your consciousness doing in the future. Do you want your consciousness suffering, saying, I am someone who suffers? Because that's what will happen. When we die and we're reborn, we'll be like, I am, Bill the dog, that wants happiness and doesn't want suffering, right? Do we want to be, Bill the dog that's going to, have to experience birth, aging, sickness, and death and all of these different things that are contaminated? Or do we want to be a consciousness that's always happy and doesn't suffer? It's our choice. And to figure out whether it's true or not that can happen, we have to study. We don't just have to say, that can't happen. That's just stupid. That's just something that, I don't know, that can't happen. I'm glad somebody didn't say that about operations and medicine and all these things that somebody who wasn't educated at another time said couldn't happen, right? So keep an open mind. It's one of the 3 qualifications of a student. Be open-minded, be intelligent, and put effort in. Those are the 3. That's what Aryadeva says. You got to be open-minded. Don't come in and say, that can't happen. Say, oh, I don't believe that can happen. Maybe it can happen, though, because I don't know everything. And then look at it logically. Be intelligent. Don't say, oh, he said it could happen, so it can happen. No. Be intelligent, Aryadeva says. See if it can happen. Look at it. Study the text. See if it can happen. If it can't happen, stop studying and go home. Go do something fun, for the time being. That will turn into suffering, but that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is, and there can't be permanent happiness, go hard at temporary happiness. That would be the smartest thing to do. But if you can establish there's something but beyond temporary happiness, then you would be silly to search out temporary happiness. That's all. So why then? Here we are back at the mirror of the Dharma. I hope I made some sense so that we want to be less attached to the things around you. So let's see. Here's the mirror of the Dharma again, folks. This is our guide to see, is any of this affecting our mind or not? If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. Does it make sense to be attached to this life, moving so quickly, and then you die? Moving so quickly, and then this thing gets ripped away from you. Be attached to that thing. Be attached to that car. Be attached to that person. Be attached to that dog. Does that make us happy? Is that working? If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. We're in samsara. How's it working out? Always happy? You like the pain that you experience when those are ripped from our lives? Does that feel good? Do you want more of that? That's what this text asks us in very, very clear terms. Do you like that? Do you want birth, aging, sickness, death? Do you want to be sick? Do you want to age every moment and move towards this part where you die and then you're a rotting corpse? Is that what you like? You want more? If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If you're a self-centered person, you'll never become enlightened. Bodhicitta is the beginning of the ridding oneself of self-centeredness forever, desiring to become an enlightened being to help everyone. You still have that self-centeredness where you think you're so much more important than everyone else? Because if you do, you don't have bodhicitta. And that's something necessary to become a Buddha. It's a mirror. I have it. Boy, am I self-centered. Definitely. Check. I don't have bodhicitta. I got to do something to get bodhicitta. That's the mirror of the Dharma. I don't have bodhicitta. Oh my. Oh my. I can't become a Buddha. Period. Full stop. I don't have it, so I can't become a Buddha without it. If there is grasping, you don't have the view. Do I believe that the I is truly established and phenomena is truly established? Do I hold it a subtle way that I have some sort of true self that's identifiable that'll always be Jeff? Didn't I just get named Jeff when I came out of a womb and somebody said, or maybe before, I don't know how it all worked. Somebody could tell you, right? Maybe. I got a name Jeff. And then somebody said, you're Jeff, you're Jeff, you're Jeff over and over again. And now I'm like, I'm Jeff. Right? Right? Will that always be? 8 verses for training the mind by Geshe Langri Tamba. With a determination to accomplish the highest welfare of all sentient beings who surpass even a wish-granting jewel, I will learn to hold them supremely dear. Whenever I associate with others, I will learn to think of myself as the lowest amongst all and respectfully hold others to be supreme from the very depths of my heart. In all actions, I will learn to search into my mind, and as soon as a disturbing emotion arises, endangering myself and others, I will firmly face and avert it. I will learn to cherish ill-natured beings and those oppressed by strong misdeeds and sufferings as if I had found a precious treasure difficult to find. When others out of jealousy treat me badly with abuse, slander, and so on, I will learn to take all loss and offer victory to them. This next line, His Holiness the Dalai Lama says that whenever he encounters someone who he would consider an enemy, who's giving him a hard time, he tries to change his view of that person by looking at them as his greatest teacher, because they're the only ones who could teach him patience. And the perfection of patience is something that the Buddha has. And the only way you could learn to be patient is by having a difficult person in your life. So you can kind of change your perspective on someone when they're angry at you or they're saying things that you maybe don't deserve, right? You can say, wow, this person's giving, the only kind of person that's giving me the opportunity to learn how to be patient. It's the only kind of person that could do that. Someone praises me, all it does is bolster my ego. I should see them as a bad person. Someone praising me, if I really think about it. It's the person that's giving me a hard time that allows me to become compassionate, that allows me to have patience, that allows me to see if this stuff's really working or not. That's the real mirror of the Dharma. So the Dalai Lama says whenever he has that experience, he takes this next stanza, he recites it, and then he imagines that he puts his head on the feet of this person that is giving him a hard time, and thanks them for giving him the teaching on patience. And he said that, even if this is contrived, it has a serious effect on your mind. And if you do this over and over again, the way you relate to that sentient being will change. He said there's no way around it. When you start to analyze that this person's allowing me to learn patience, and if you visualize yourself making a prostration and putting your head on their feet as you're reciting this, it'll change you. When the one whom I've benefited with great hope unreasonably hurts me very badly, I will learn to view that person as an excellent spiritual guide. In short, I will learn to offer to everyone without exception all help and happiness directly and indirectly, and respectfully take upon myself all harm and suffering of my mothers. I will learn to keep all those practices undefiled by the stains of the 8 worldly concerns, and by understanding all phenomena as like illusion, be released from the bondage of attachment. So now, so that we don't grasp at what we're doing is so great, we're so wonderful, and the thing that we do is better than what everyone else does, and so forth, we really need to recognize the lack of true establishment of action, agent, and object, that this process that we're going through, this process of prayer and teaching and so forth, has no inherent existence. I don't have inherent existence, right? The actual prayer that I'm doing has no inherent existence. The Buddhas I'm saying prayers to have no inherent existence of this or that. So we have to understand that that doesn't mean non-existence. That's wrong view. Full existence, that's wrong view. Independent existence. We're looking for dependent origination. I dependently originate in dependence upon you. If there's no other, there's no I. I dependently originate based upon my aggregates, my physical and mental aggregates. I see, and then I say Jeff, and I cling to me as being me. But there is no inherently existent Jeff to cling to. There is no inherently existent book to cling to. It's merely a subjective, conventional reality I'm looking at that comes together through a collection of parts that I then name as a Buddhist book. It has no objective existence from its own side, nor do any of the prayers that I pray out of it. So it's very important that we seal all of our dedications and all of our practice with the true nature of reality, so we don't go right back to the whole point of it is to get rid of the grasping itself, and we can do all of this and just enhance our grasping itself. I am Jeff the Buddhist that studies this correct text that is inherently existent because the Buddha is. And it's that clinging that is the root of our suffering. So we have to try to lessen our grasping at it. And I'm the best, and that's the best, and this is that. It doesn't have any of those qualities. It just is. Through dependent origination, it can turn me into a Buddha, but it doesn't have any kind of inherent nature from its own side to be able to produce it. And that's why the Buddha can't just wave his hand and make us all better. And that's why it doesn't make any sense that something, imperfect could create such a continuum as mine. So let's do the concluding prayers. Fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I'll read the dedication. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri, and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land, surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. Ganri rawe gorwe jinjan dir, mendan dewa malu jongwe ne, Jinre wan denzin Gyatso yi, Shabizi de badu den yori. I pray that in all our lives, may we never be separated from Kensur Geshe Wandak, whether he appears to us in male or female form, in ordinary realms, in the emanation body, or when we become Arya Bodhisattvas, may we meet the enjoyment body. But in all our lives, may we always meet with this perfect teacher, and when we become Buddhas, help him or her to bring all sentient beings to a state of Buddhahood by teaching them the truth. Thank you so much, everybody. See you on Thursday at Bodhicitta class, the only entrance into the Mahayana, the only way we can become a Buddha. So we'll see you then. I appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.